So expectations were that 2020 would actually likely be similar or not as robust as 19, given election year issues and other things, and certainly the pandemic changed that because there was, a big run or interest in purchasing secondary properties outside of cities and areas that are probably higher densities to much lower densities, with buyers concerned about where to put their kids to school, to buyers knowing that they may not be going back to their offices in these cities, and then having to work from home and finding other locations other than their primary residence where to live. And so that just brought upon a really substantial interest in rural and resort and ranch properties. We saw, as far as we're concerned, at least studying the Intermountain West, most of the ski resort markets just went off the charts and recorded some of their best years ever. And that also then, of course, impacted our ranch market as well, where we, again, clearly 2020 exceeded in 2019, which, really wasn't expected from my point of view. I do think there were some differences. Much of the farms and things that we do work on or do represent or market, they tend to be in rural areas that, they're, the big interest for many people, especially in farms, is the income. And so the push really wasn't towards necessarily income-producing properties. The push was to specifically locations, and specifically also those that had existing improvements, turnkey operations. So what we noticed were, if you were within an hour, even 30 minutes, from a resort area, you were going to see a much bigger push. So, for interest or sales, especially those with improvements. And I think that was the key. I think properties with improvements, turnkey deals, people could, turn to and actually utilize, upon closing, was important. Whereas traditionally, that is less of a concern for us. Many times we always think an open canvas or blank canvas is something that people will look at. And clearly that wasn't. We were really highlighting, and many buyers were really, looking for properties with, improvements that were good enough for them to use. Hard to say, but it, the biggest issue we see right now is inventory and lack thereof. There's just, with the push here, during 2020, a lot of things went off the market and were sold because of that, and therefore reduced the number of available properties, which has now certainly created a seller's market. And it's really a seller's market, again, as it relates to properties that are in some proximity, town, services, resorts. I think there's still, as far as outlying properties that are more wilderness settings, those haven't, the demand and supply are still similar. Those haven't changed as much. So I do think we'll still see, a strong appreciation, I guess, for these properties, continued heightened interest, more of a seller's market in those areas that, again, have some relationship to, these towns and resort areas, and I think what we will see here potentially, it all really depends, but I could see that within 3 years, perhaps a change in the market, in that perhaps then folks who have purchased all these things may have realized that, or the fear of the pandemic and all these other things may subside. People's minds change, they go back to normalcy, and I do fear that within 3 some years that we see a return to a buyer's market with a bit of oversupply of inventory. But again, given what we focus us on such a unique type of proposition of the ranches we do have, it continues to be fairly, a unique buying pool, and for that reason, unless we have a really big shift in our economic situation, where we see another recession, I still see that the market will continue to be in at least for the ranch properties and recreational properties, continued growth and steady supply, and hopefully steady demand. And just inventory, just stick with it, have a long-term plan, be persistent. These are, the United States, and we still have a wonderful system to be able to own parcels like these, and our legal system supports that, and it's a foundation of being able to own land. So it's always been a terrific investment. Our greatest problem with the land that we do deal with, unlike many other kinds of land, the income production is just not the same as, of course, buying, apartments and office buildings and retail and industrial. But from a long-term hold, I can't think of anything better to be able to own, because not only do you have something that can at least increase in interest, the interest of the property, and appreciate over time. But you also get the joy of doing something, working on the land, and also perhaps creating stewardship for either the community or your family, and these things just are become so unique that there's greater opportunities long term for people to just dial in. So buyers, I would just say, be patient, really define what you're looking for, and so we've been really working with landowners to specify long-term objectives, and look at it, because we often get calls, people looking all over the West. It's like, well, we need to start refining that a little bit. What elevation? Do you want to? You want timber? Do you want sage, pastures? How much water rights do you want to have? Most people don't know about water rights. There's so many things that need to be identified. So just be patient and work with somebody who can at least help you focus on those things that bring benefit and allow you to improve and enhance your property over time. So you have something that is worth more than when you bought it, and both as far as economically and as standpoint of conservation values as well. Advice to sellers is, don't get too greedy. These opportunities, especially in a seller's market, may not last long. So, be again disciplined, have realistic expectations, and continue to at least add value to your property. and avoid putting such hefty price tags that you miss the opportunity and you miss this market. I do get concerned sometimes when people see this because it doesn't get as frothy as it is right now. But I just don't see these things lasting long because I've seen these blips over the years, and then then all of a sudden you're on the market again for 3, 6, or more years, and it just you just lost out on an opportunity. So sometimes realizing cash and returns on these things isn't always easy either. So market appropriately, know what attributes you have that are important, and that would be my recommendation.